Hi, I'm Dr. Maggie Perry with Tell Me What You're Proud of. In this podcast mini-series, we're discussing the core principles for overcoming anxiety and OCD. Today, we're discussing how to float through anxiety compassionately. It takes humility and courage to accurately assess where you are and commit to the next step. If you feel intense anxiety just getting out of your house, the idea of obtaining and committing to a job on a daily basis might seem beyond what's possible for you. If you feel intense anxiety sending an introductory text message to a potential romantic partner, the ongoing vulnerability required to sustain a long term relationship might similarly feel overwhelming. Thinking about this, many individuals with anxiety disorders get so discouraged that they lose the motivation to take the next step. It's important to see this as part of the pattern of anxiety's game. Anxiety and his allies, self criticism and depression, will tell you what you're doing is currently not good enough. This shouldn't be hard for you. You shouldn't have to practice this. You're never going to get to where you want to be. You need to be ready for this type of message and say back to it. Every time I identify, label, and allow an uncomfortable thought, feeling, or sensation, you get less power. What I'm practicing is a new process. It's not about my outcome in any given moment. It's okay that this is where I am and what I have to do. My fear circuitry has become conditioned by associations that don't make rational sense. For whatever reason, other people's fear circuitry has different associations than the ones I have. The only way to get to where I want to be is to gradually change these associations. If it's difficult to muster the compassion, humility, and courage to set small, achievable goals on your way to overcoming your anxiety disorder, consider how you would teach a child to read. The child might really want to start reading a novel, but if he doesn't know his letters, he can't just jump into a text like that one. He might not completely understand how identifying letters is the beginning of a more complex process of combining letters to make sounds, combining sounds to make words, combining words to make sentences, and combining sentences to make stories that convey ideas and make meaning. You know that. So you're likely to be very patient with the child, encouraging him to start with the first step, continue to practice, reminding him that eventually he'll be able to read. You wouldn't criticize the child if he isn't making progress fast enough because there's no pace that's right for everything. And you know that pressuring him into trying to be someone he isn't won't help him read faster. If you saw him struggling, you might make it easier, meaning that you'd break it into smaller component pieces. You wouldn't make it easier because you didn't believe in him. You'd make it easier because you understand that he has to master the smaller components before he can master the more complex process. Reading is also a skill to be mastered, meaning that having greater motivation will increase his skill-based acquisition. As a good teacher, you'd work to keep him motivated because staying motivated is part of the process. Can you see the comparison to overcoming an anxiety disorder? Your anxiety disorder was created, intensified, and maintained by a cycle of fear, resistance, and avoidance of your thoughts, feelings, and sensations. The skills you need to step out of the cycle are the opposite of what you've tried so far. In the past, you have minimized, disregarded, and avoided your anxious thoughts, sensations, and feelings. Now you'll be identifying, labeling, inviting, and even provoking more anxious thoughts, feelings, and sensations. This identifying and labeling process is like learning the alphabet of anxiety. Per the metaphor, you won't be able to read, that is, to do the things you care about in the presence of anxiety with skill and grace, until you've practiced the basics over and over. It's important to do whatever it takes to stay motivated to take small steps. Self compassion and humor are helpful strategies for staying motivated. And your suffering isn't just because of recurrent, unwanted, intrusive thoughts, chronic worry, a depressed mood, or another uncomfortable private experience. The interpretation that you shouldn't be having such an experience, and that there's something bad, weak, or crazy about you for such experience creates, maintains, and intensifies your suffering too. This type of self-criticism hurts. Perhaps it started as the voice of a critical parent or some other significant person. Sometimes you continue to receive criticism from that person, and that hurts. Self-criticism, though, is you against you. The critical voice is no longer someone else's. Now it's yours. You aren't on your own team. The game isn't fun, and none of you is going to win. You might criticize yourself in an attempt to control a thought or a feeling that you don't like. I suspect that it works every once in a while. especially if by working you mean that you can avoid your thoughts and feelings long enough to get relief from them for a short period of time. It doesn't work to alleviate suffering long term for anyone ever. Trying to make thoughts go away will make them more likely. Suppressing feelings will make them bigger and stronger. Some people who avoid their thoughts and feelings don't report having anxiety or depression, but they're just suffering differently. Numbing out our undesirable thoughts and feelings also numbs out desirable feelings like joy, trust, connection, compassion, affection, and playfulness. You might criticize yourself because you think it's the best way to learn is through criticism. This is just an old theory. Many of us were educated this way, but it isn't true. The best way to learn is to have the safety, time, space, and motivation to try. You have to feel safe to have the courage to put forth effort and risk failing. You don't need criticism when you make a mistake while trying to learn. You need enough safety to keep trying. Are you on my team now? Let's help you get on your team. So compassion is understanding and staying with your own experience. It's an attitude where you're willing to stay with your experience and relate to it with openness and curiosity rather than criticism. Here's some helpful self-talk. Here's some helpful and compassionate self-talk. You might be thinking, I shouldn't be feeling this. Other people don't feel this. Nothing happened that is so bad, so I shouldn't feel this badly. If you want to respond compassionately, you could say, of course this is happening. Of course I suffer. I'm human and all humans suffer. Also, I knew this particular suffering was coming because I understand my anxiety and my OCD. In the presence of a perceived threat, my mind has catastrophic thoughts that arrive with a spike of uncertainty. If I'm not prepared for this, I will naturally brace against this feeling and perceived threat, and naturally it'll feel worse. Of course, this is happening to my mind because of my biological vulnerabilities. Of course, I naturally brace because this is uncomfortable. It takes a lot of self-awareness, understanding, and a good strategy to get through a moment like this without making it worse. I just got tricked in this moment, but I can learn from it. Here's an opportunity for me to practice that strategy. You might have a thought like, oh, I'm such an idiot. Why did I do that? I always make this type of mistake. I'm never going to learn. This will have devastating consequences for me. I deserve to feel this because of what I did. I'm going to feel this forever. A compassionate response would be, there is no failure, there's only data. I tried or I'm going to try that thing I care about. It will either go well or it's exposure to thoughts and feelings that I'm working to accept. Either way, I'll learn and grow, and that means I win. Even though that in this moment, it seems like my mistake might have real consequences for me, I can still learn, grow, and change. I don't have certainty that the way I'm responding now and whatever comes next won't be better than what I had before, and that means I now have opportunity. You might have a thought like, why do I always feel this? There's something deeply wrong with me that makes me different from others, and no one else will ever understand. A compassionate response is, this is a good opportunity to observe and describe what's happening within me. Because I'm human and inherently part of the rest of the community of humans, nothing happens within me that has never or will never happen to another human. It's not that no one else will ever understand me, but rather I currently don't understand me. This is a hard moment, but if I turn towards myself right now, I have a chance at understanding myself and my suffering better. I might forget what I'm experiencing now when I'm not suffering. So now is the best time to observe and describe what's happening. It's courageous to show up and learn what creates, maintains, and intensifies your anxiety and OCD. And I'm proud of you for taking that next step.